very good morning, everyone. So, I welcome you all to the Creator Tech Connect series. And this is going to be the very first series of this year, 2023. I'm so happy to welcome each and every one of you who has joined this session. So, in today's session, we'll be discussing about integrations in Zoho Creator. So, the capabilities and possibilities of integrations and what are the different types of integrations will be discussed in today's session. My name is Catherine, and I will be the host of this session. So let's get started. Now, this is the agenda of today's session. So we'll get started with introduction to integrations and the types of integrations and how connections is important when it comes to integration approach. And we'll delve deep into each of the integration concepts, starting with integration field and form, inbuilt integrations using Deluge, third-party API integration, integration flow, and simultaneously, we'll also be doing a demonstration of each of these, and then we'll also see key pointers of the entire session. Now, starting off with the introduction. Now, as the name suggests, or as the word refers, integration itself is a communication, right? Now, in this instance, it's a method of for two applications of software to communicate with each other. Right? Now, why do we need to integrate? Now, here, the exchange of information is important, and that's the reason we are trying to integrate. Now, in this instance, it happens between Zoho Creator and other services to collaborate with each other. Now, it could be other Zoho suite of applications or other third-party services. Okay. Now, there are different types of integrations that is available and possible from Creator. Now you can use an integration field, which is one of the form field, and then you can create an integration form itself in order to access a module from the other service and integrate with the other service. And you can also go ahead and use the inbuilt integration actions or tasks using Zoho's native scripting language, which is Deluge. And then you can also go for a third-party API integration. And there's another powerful aspect of integration, which is called as integration flow. Okay, so we'll delve deep into each of these concepts now. Now, just before that, there are a couple of points which we need to be aware of, and it'd be good for us to be familiar with these 2 points. Now, starting off with connections. Now, connections are required or intended in order to connect to the external facilities. Right, in Zoho Creator, these the integrations are facilitated through these connections, which ideally is the link between, it forms the link between the different services. Okay, now this is going to be a one-time setup. So once it is set up, it can be used across the applications in your account. Now there are 2 types of connections. One is system connections and the other one is user connections. Now, again, as the name suggests, is system connections. Now, these are set of connections that gets created by default when we try to define or perform an integration action from the user end. Okay. Now, even though this gets created by default, there's a small authorization process that is involved, and which has to be authorized by the super admin. Now, the next type of connection is a user connection. Now, these are some of the connections which are created by the users manually. Okay, when you manually create a connection, that becomes your user connection. And now here the authorization will happen at the same time when the connection is created. Now, you can find these connections in your inside Creator within the microservices. When you log into Creator in your dashboard, to the left side, you will see microservices. Just within that, you'll be able to see all the connections that you've established for that particular account. Now, there's also another term which is called data source. Now that we've connected, we've established this connection in order to do something, right? In order to perform something. So now, the next step is data source, right? So now when you establish the connection, next you want to access the data from the other third-party service or other Zoho suite of application, right? Now that is ideally the data source. Now here the data source is used to manage a specific module that we're trying to access from a third-party service. Now that we are doing with the help of the connection that we've already established. Now, to give you a better picture, now the first thing is we establish a connection, we create a data source. By doing so, we are providing the data source access to the creator applications. Okay. Now let's delve deep into each of these concepts, each of these integration approach. Now, first is integration field. Now, integration field is one of the form field that you see in Creator. Now, this is like a lookup field. Okay, so in a normal lookup field, we'll be ideally looking up to data from a different form or from a different application in our account. Now, with this integration field, we'll be looking up to data to another service. It could be either another Zoho suite of application or another third-party application. So ideally, this field enables us to look up to data that's stored in an external service. Now, just to understand a bit further about integration field, we are looking up to data stored in an external service, and the data is definitely stored as well in an external service. When you use it, it is stored in the external service, and it refers to the record ID of the record that is available in the other service. Okay, now record ID is the 19-digit ID, which is unique across all the Zoho products. Like Zoho applications, right? Now this integration field can also be used within the workflow. Another thing is you can when you have same account for both the services, you can go ahead and use this integration field. Now in the demonstration, we'll be using this integration field and integrate with another Zoho suite of application, which is called Zoho Recruit. So in this instance, with the same account, I'm trying to integrate both the services, that is Creator and Zoho Recruit. Okay, now this is a screenshot where I have pictures of Zoho Recruit and Zoho Creator. Now using this integration field, now you see there is a candidate information. Now Recruit is a recruitment management application. Recruitment management application of Zoho's. Okay, so now it has candidate information, and using this integration field, I'm trying to bring the candidate information inside Zoho Creator. That's what you exactly see in this screenshot, and that's what we'll be, how to achieve this is something we'll be seeing in the demonstration. Okay, now let's take a, before the demonstration, let me just give you the use case that we have considered here. Now, here in this use case, let's take an HR organization. Okay, so the HR organization, they're mainly involved in some recruitment activities, or it could be like a recruitment drive or onboarding activities or performance management, or sometimes even project management, right? So let's say this specific HR organization, they have a system or an application in place in order to manage or maintain all these recruitment activities. Okay. Now for that, I've created an application called Zoho Recruitment Tracker. This is what the HR organization using in order to maintain and manage all their recruitment activities. So they have the recruitment events, registration form, the candidate registration form, and some job openings, and they can manage their ongoing recruitment, and they also manage their all candidates, and they also have some settings here to perform. Okay, so now here, now there's also, I'll also show you Zoho Recruit. Now it's a hiring platform where you can manage all of this hiring related activities. So now, when you log into, now ideally, let's say you have, the only thing that we need to keep in mind is we need to be able to have subscription, have subscribed to Zoho Recruit as well in order to perform this particular integration method. Okay, now here you see there are different modules, right? So job openings, candidates, interviews, clients, etc. Right now, this candidate information is what I'm trying to bring inside my creator form. This is what I'm trying to bring inside my creator form using this integration field. Okay, so now let's see how I can achieve it. Now I go to my creator application and click on the edit button. And I'll go to the form builder. Now in here, to the left side, the creators field, sorry, to creators form field, I see a field called integration here within the special fields. Now this is what I'm going to be using. So I'll drag and drop it here wherever I want to use it. And instantly it is there's a pop-up that got opened and it is asking me to choose a service, create a data source, and choose the field that I want to use from Recruit to Creator. Right now, the service here becomes Zoho Recruit. Now, these are the 4 default integrations that is available within Creator. Now, from here, I'm choosing Zoho Recruit. Okay. Now the next thing, so this is where I was just a few minutes back, I was talking about data source. Now this is exactly what I was talking about in the presentation just a few minutes back. Now this is ideally going to allow me to access a specific module inside the Recruit, inside the other service that I'm trying to integrate with. So ideally I want this name from the candidate modules. So I'll go ahead and choose the candidate modules from here. Now this specific drop down is showing the modules or the data source that I've already created. If I want to create a new data source, which means if I want to access a new module, I hit the plus button here and I'll go ahead and choose the service and it'll list me all the modules here. Now there's one more point here. Now all the modules that you see here will be based on the subscription plan that you have for the other service that you're trying to integrate with. In this instance, it is Zoho Recruit. It will be based on the subscription plan of Zoho Recruit. Right? Now, as I have already established the created the data source, I'm just going to use the same. Now, I'll instantly then it'll ask me to choose which field do I want to use from the Zoho Recruit. Now, I want the candidate name, so I'm going to be choosing the first name here. Okay. Now, I'll choose the first name and I'll hit the done. Now, as soon as I've done that, to the right side, you see the field properties. Now, the first thing is I'll go ahead and change the field name to, let's say I'm going to call it Recruit Candidate. So I'm going to call it Recruit Candidate. Right now, the next thing is a display field. Do you see something called a display field, right? Now here we've only chosen first name, but ideally we want the full name, right? So in that case, using this integration field, you'll be able to choose and show up to a maximum of 3 fields from the other service inside Zoho Creator. So I can go ahead and choose up to, I can add another field as well. Now here I will choose the last name, and in case if you want to give any separators, you can give that. And if you want to have a phone number by next to that, you can go ahead and do that. Now here you see a maximum of 3 display fields is allowed. That's what it's saying. Now let's just go ahead with first name and last name, and I'll say done. So now I'll access this in live. And now here you see a new field got created as Recruit Candidate. Now when I click here, you will see all of the candidate names from Recruit is clearly picked up here, right? I just want to show here as well. Christina, Aaron, Martha, Prabhu, and Angel. Now the same fields have got picked up, same candidates have got picked up here as well, right? So this is something you can achieve with your integration field when you have services, when you have subscribed to both the services that you're trying to integrate with. Now, there's also one more thing that you can do with this particular integration field. Now, let's say you want to, you've already introduced this now. Now, let's say you want to use this within your workflow. Right? Maybe let's say based on this, based on the name that you choose in this particular field, you want the email ID and the phone number to be auto-populated for this particular candidate. So now for that, you can write a workflow and you can use this particular field within that. Okay, and now that can be achieved using another integration method or type, which is called inbuilt integration tasks using Deluge. Now that I can show you when we are discussing about that specific integration method. Okay, now coming back to my presentation. So now that we know how to get or access data from other service and use it in Creator using integration field. Now let's say we want to push some data to the other services. It could be again, it could be another Zoho product, or it could be a third-party application. Then we can go for the next integration type, which is called integration forms. Okay. Now, using these integration forms, the data that you are trying to submit through these forms are directly added to the modules in the selected service. Okay. Now, just to understand a bit further about integration form, here the data that you're trying to push from here to there is not stored in Zoho Creator. It is instead, it is stored in the other services. Okay. So you can use the integration form in order to create or update records in the other services. And this form cannot be used within a workflow. Now, again, with the same account, you can access both the services. Now, in this instance, in the demonstration, we'll be using another Zoho suite of product, which is Zoho Projects. It's a project management software. Okay. So now here is a screenshot of Zoho Creator and my Zoho Projects. Okay. So to the left side, you see Zoho Creator, where we're trying to add a project using an integration form, and that gets created as a new project in my Zoho Projects. And from there, once it got created, from there I can go ahead and manage my projects from Zoho Projects. Just to push and create the form, create the project, I'm using integration form in Creator. Okay. Now again, let's consider a use case, the same use case, okay, where let's say but in this instance, let's say they're also managing their projects using Zoho Projects, okay, the same HR organization. So through the same recruitment tracker application, when I submit a project, it should also be picked up in the Zoho Projects. That's it. This is exactly what I'm going to try to achieve in the demonstration. Okay. Now let me take you to the to my application, Zoho Recruitment Tracker. Now I go to edit this one. Before that, let me. Okay. So now the reference link to the integration field and a few pointers just we discussed before will be shared in the chat section by my co-trainers. So now before we get started, I also wanted to show you about the Zoho Projects. This is my Zoho Projects, and this is a project management software, right? From here, I can manage my projects, and I can keep adding tasks to my projects, give a start and end date. I can manage it from here. So using the integration form, we're trying to integrate between these two services. So first, I'll go ahead and create a form. Now I'll hit the plus button, and I'll choose a form. Now, as we all know, we can create form from scratch, import from data, and we can also choose from a variety of templates that is available and built by Zoho, right? Now, there's also another method, which is called using an integrated data source, and this is where the integration form comes into picture. Now, these four are by default created by Zoho. Now, if you want to choose from any other applications, any other Zoho applications or other third-party applications apart from these four, you can click here and it will be categorized based on the industry. Now, here I'm going to choose Zoho Projects. And again, the data source step will be involved in case if you want to create a new data source. Now, this step is same as what we did for integration field. You can choose the service, choose the module, choose the service, choose the module, and then you can go ahead and create a new data service. Now, again, the modules will display here based on the subscription plan you have for Zoho Projects. Right now, I've already created a data source for Zoho Projects for this particular projects module, and that's exactly what I'm going to use here. So now let's say I'm naming my integration form. Let's say projects integration form, and I'll say create. Right now, here there are a couple of points to notice. To the left side, the fields that you are seeing, unlike the normal form, here the fields that you are seeing are the fields that is available in Zoho Projects and not the usual creator fields. Right now, from there, you can go ahead and drag and drop any fields that you are trying to push data to Zoho Projects. You can use all the fields, drag and drop and use all the fields. Now, here you will notice there's a mandatory field, which is called project name, which means without the mandatory field, the entire integration will not be successful. So when it comes to integration forms, this mandatory field is an important point to keep in mind or to notice. Now to the right side, you have the properties. You can go ahead and set the properties. Now let's say I want to push a project. So project name, I'm good with the project name. Let's say I also want to give a description of my project. So I'm saying project name and project overview, right? Now I'll say done. Let's see how our integration form looks like. Now this is my integration form. Okay, now here when I submit the project here, it gets created as new project here as well. So let's go ahead and give. Now let's say this particular HR organization is also managing some recruitment drive in their other facilities. Let's say in their facility which is available in Bangalore or Delhi or Bombay. So let's create a project for that for them to manage. Okay, so let's say I'm going to give the project name as Zoho Hiring Delhi. In the project overview, I'm saying a recruitment drive for business analysts in Delhi facility. I'm hitting the submit button. So once I've done that, you see a message data added successfully. Now I go to my projects and refresh. And I'm expecting this to be available as a project here. Right? You can see that got created here, Zoho Delhi recruitment drive. Right? Now, when I click here, it takes me to this page where I can add tasks and manage my project completely from here. Now, here I can also give a status, mark a status, and give a start and end date and start managing my projects. Right? Now, that is pretty much what I can do with the integration forms. Now, these forms are again, you can use these forms again in your, in case if you want to create a report, you can go ahead and use this form from Creator, right? Now, okay. So now, until now, the integration methods that we were discussing were handled within the form component, right? Now, but all the times, this only these type of integration methods will not be sufficient enough, right? So we might want to go for further customizations. So, for example, in order for me to go for further customization, there is another way of integrating, and at that point of time, we can go with inbuilt integration tasks. Right? Now, as the name suggests, it's inbuilt. Now, this again you can use in order to do some further customizations of integrations to the other Zoho suite of applications. Okay, and that will be done using Deluge, which is Zoho's native scripting language. Okay, now in this diagram, you can see here you can see Gabriel is the account holder, right? Gabriel is the account holder, and the and let's say the account holder, let's consider the account as account A. So using this account A, here the data will flow through from Zoho Creator to other Zoho services. Okay, now ideally, this type of integration method is going to help you facilitate transferring your data to the data that is stored across different Zoho services. And in this way, they're going to help you provide accessibility to allow you to fetch, modify, and delete your data. So even when you want applications within your creator to communicate with each other, you can go for this specific integration, inbuilt integration task method. Okay, now this is the syntax structure. So you declare a variable and then you go ahead and choose your Zoho service. You define your actions and parameters. Okay, now in this, for this demonstration purpose, for the inbuilt integration tasks, we'll again be using Zoho Projects. But in this instance, we'll have a different use case. Okay. So let's say the different use cases. Now, before that, I'll also want to tell you, these are some of the commonly used integration projects that is available for Zoho Projects. And a link with regards to this information will be shared by my co-trainers in the chat box for you to refer to. Right? So you can create projects in the Zoho Projects. You can get portals. You can get records by ID, get project details. These are some of the commonly used integration tasks. Okay. Now, the next step for me to do is I first declare variable, and in this instance, it will be a collection variable, which is a map variable in order for me to give the key and values. Okay, now the use case that we're taking here is a different one from the previously used to use case. Now, let's say here we're taking a use case as media management. Okay, so this ideally refers to a management of media organization. So that could include different types of managements, like it could be even strategic management, public relations, production management, or even organization management, and even sometimes marketing of other media enterprises. Right. So now in this instance, let's say the organization, it's an organization who want to manage their programs or their events using an application. Okay. Now, using that application where they are ideally planning and organizing their activities around these programs. Now, for this, I have built another application which is called Zoho Program Manager. Just show that to you in a minute. Right. Now here I can go ahead and manage my programs, add programs, and look at the program schedule. And I can manage the programs as tasks internally. I can handle my participants. I can do some admin works, and I also have an online news forum. Okay, now this is the use case that we're using. Now in the demonstration, let's say I'm integrating with Zoho Projects. Okay, so using this particular application, Zoho Program Management, what I'm trying to do is when I add a program here, it will create as a new projects in Zoho Projects so that I can add tasks and manage my projects from there. Right now, here I will be achieving this by writing a function. Then I will call the function inside my workflow. Right now, before I start my demo, I also want to quickly show you about the build integration tasks for Zoho Projects. I believe the link would have already been shared. I just wanted to quickly show you what we'll be doing here exactly. Now here, these are the list of tasks that is relevant to Zoho Projects. Now for the demo purpose, we'll be creating projects. So if I click on that, clearly it shows me all the instructions as to what is the syntax and what are the values that I need to give here, and an example as well. Okay, so now let's get started. So now I'll go to edit this application. And I'll also keep one opened in live. So it's always a good practice to keep one in edit mode and one in live. So whenever we make change, we can see it in the live as well. Now I'll go to edit, and as I was telling, I'll first start by creating a function. So I'll go into the workflows and I'll hit the function. Right. I'll create a new function in order to create Zoho project. Okay, I'll give the name as that, and I'll select the language as Deluge, and I'll select a namespace. Now, namespace is something you can either go with the default namespace, or you can add a new namespace as well. Now, this is where you group your relevant functions. Okay, now I'm choosing default, and I'm giving the return type as void. So I'll create the function. And now, based on the input that I've given, some statements got generated automatically. So let me just zoom it a bit. I hope you guys are able to clearly see my screen. Right. Now, the first thing for me to do is I'll create a map variable. Okay, let's call it as values map. And here, let's say I'm trying to give the name and let's say a description for my project. Okay, so values map, and I'm using this keyword called put in order to add my key value pairs. Okay, now here again, I will be defining the name, okay, the name of my project. But just one point to note here is it's always important to give the API names of the other service in order for the synchronization or integration to happen successfully. Okay. Now the API names is something similar to the field link name that we have in Zoho Creator, right? The name that is referred at the backend. Now for that, I'll go to the Zoho Projects. The link that I was just showing just a few minutes back. And here in the values, you will see something called Zoho Projects API. when you click that, now here you can see the link name or the parameters name, that is API names that is used. Now let's say I'm taking the name from here. I'll take the name from here and I'll paste it here. Now here is where I want to give a name. Let's say there is a new, okay, let's say there is a new podcast launch for, let's say that's for J.K. Rowling. Okay, and the next thing is I want to give a description, right? Again, I'll go here and I'll get the API name of description from here. In case if you want to give any other fields, it's a good practice to take it from here. So I'll come back here, put that, and I'll give my description here. So new, let's say I'm saying new podcast launch for J.K. Rowling with NDTV. Just giving a description. So now I'll go ahead and info my values map. Save it and I'll execute. And once I've done that, I just have some response. Now, this is the variable declaration. Now, here comes the next important step. Now, this is where I'm going to integrate using my inbuilt integration tasks. So for that, I'll be using a function called Zoho integration. I'll simply drag and drop that function here, and I'll start declaring my variable. Now, now I'm going to give my variable as projects integration. And here I can choose the service that I'm trying to integrate with. So now in this instance, it is Zoho Projects. So I'll choose Zoho Projects from here. But at the same time, you can also see it lists all the other Zoho applications to which you can go ahead and integrate using this particular method. Now you can integrate to Zoho CRM, Zoho Calendar, Zoho Invoice, even for Recruit that we were seeing in previous examples, Zoho Inventory, and a lot more like Zoho Projects and Zoho Service, Zoho Bookings, etc. Right? So from it lists all the other Zoho services that is available for you to integrate with. Now here I'm choosing Zoho Projects. And what function am I trying to perform here? I'm trying to create a project. So I'll choose that particular function from here, create project, and it lists all of the other tasks that can be performed for Zoho Projects. Now that is what is shown in here. Okay, so now I'll say create project, and I'll give, now there's something called portal in Zoho Projects, which is a parameter in your syntax. Now where you can see the portal in Zoho Projects, it will be you can find the portals from here in the link. This will be the portal's name. If not, if you have different portals, like multiple portals, you click on here on your account and you will see something called My Portals, and it will take you to the different type, all the portals that you have associated with your particular account. So now this is the name which is available here, right? Now I'll just take the name, the portal name from here, and I'll paste it here within a string. Now the next data map is nothing but my variables that I just created. Now I'll say insert. Okay, now it's also a good practice good practice to mention the connections name. So now I'll show you. I've already established a connection for this. Now I'll show you where I took this connection name from just in a minute. Okay, so now I'll go ahead and info my projects integration. I'll execute. So when I execute it, you see here we have a JSON response, right? Which means ideally it got successfully integrated, and ideally I'm expecting this to be picked up as a new project inside my Zoho Projects. Let's just go ahead and check that now. So I'll go to Zoho Projects and refresh, and I should see something as podcast launch for J.K. Rowling. So yes. So here is where you see that, right? Now this got created. Now from here, you can start setting the status, start adding tasks, and define your start and end date, and you can start managing your project from Zoho Projects, right? Now let's say I have this function. However, in order for me to create a project every time, if I have only a function, I might have to like execute the function every time manually. But I don't want to do it. The idea is to submit it via this particular form, and it should get picked up. Now there's one more step that I want to perform. I will write a workflow. Now before that, I'm going to submit here from the name, right? From based on the name, it should get picked up there. So I will pass some parameters in my function, and I will make this more dynamic, right? So for that, I'm going here and I'm passing the parameter here as name, and I'm just trying to make this more dynamic. So every time the name should be picked up as what I submit from my form. So now I delete this and then I append it with my parameter. Right? Now it become more dynamic. Now I'll go ahead and write a workflow for the add program form. So I'll write a new workflow and I'll call this particular function. So now add program created. When the record even should be when record is created, and when do I want it to be triggered? After the successful form submission, and new project to be created. Just naming it. It's a good practice to name the workflows or even the functions with the apt name, so that when we come back and refer at a later point, it will make sense to us, right? So now I'll go to add new action, go to Deluge script, and I'm using this statement called this app, this keyword called this app, in order to call my function. Now, if I keep a dot over it, now it will show me all the projects that I just, all the functions that I've created. Now, the function that we already created, we just created is Zoho Project, create Zoho Project. Now, here again, I will be, I will have to ideally specify based on what field the functions should be called. So now that should be the name field. I'm using this keyword called input because I'm referring it to the main form. Okay, name, and I'll say update, and I'll say done. So now I come here. Now let's say I'm submitting another program. Let's say this program is a movie press meet. Okay, and I'm just typing this as broadcast media, and I'll hit the submit button. So program details added successfully. So now ideally, I'm expecting this to be picked up in Zoho Projects as well. So you see something called movie press meet. It just got created. Now it becomes more dynamic. No matter what different programs that I submit in Creator, it will be picked up based on the function and workflow that we've written. Now from here again, I can go ahead and manage my project from Zoho Projects. Right? So now let's. This is pretty much with the inbuilt integration tasks. Now, so far we've been, seeing this example in order to customize the integration more with the other Zoho suite of project. Like now, let's say now when you want to integrate with other services, we can go with the next integration method, which is third-party API option, right? The APIs. Now, this again, you can choose from other Zoho services. Like other services, and you can go ahead and access their API documentation and use, or you can also use an API from the open source, right? So in case, say for example, you are trying to integrate to a third-party application, let's say QuickBooks or Salesforce, all you have to do is just go to have subscribed to that particular service, and then just refer their API documentation, which will give you a step-by-step process of how the integration has to be done, and then you can start integrating with the other service. Now, in this instance, we are going for a demonstration with an open source API. Now, before that, let's see what is API, how it works, and what are the things we need to be familiarized with APIs. Okay. Now, as I was telling, what we have a client and a system source, and this is again another method of integrating from client to a system source using API. Now let's say a weather information. Okay, so let's say you have a weather application. Now how does this API work? Now before that, I'll tell you how does this API work. Now let's say you have a web application in a browser, and you also have that specific web server and the web database, right? Now you send a request from the web application in your browser. It hits the web server and web service database, and it brings the response back based on what we've given in the web browser, right? Now, what do we think happens in the backend is something is taken care by the API. Okay, now what I mean by that is, let's take a weather application. Okay, so you have that application, you key in some information in order to see that day's weather or the next 3 days weather, you key in some information. So now that hits that particular app server and brings us the response, right? Now at the back end, there is something, this API will act as an aggregator between the between this application and the server, and will fetch us the information. Now, that's what an API does for us. Okay, now there are some components of an API that we need to be familiar with in order to go ahead and use. Now, starting off with authentication, limits, methods, and responses. Okay, now authentication will be the basic authentication method that happens between the client and the server. So we have a client who's requesting for a resource from the server. So for that, first the server needs to verify if the client is a authenticated or a verified user. For that, it asks for the username and password to the user, and then the user sends it back to the server, and based on that, the server verifies it, makes sure he's an authenticated user, and then returns the data back to the client, right? Now this is very basic, and it is very critical as well, right? Now there's another important thing to keep in mind when it comes to API. So let's say we have an open source API. So now that API inside Creator, we need to make use of that API. Now, how do we do that? Now, for that, we have to call that API first. And for that, I will be using a function called invoke URL. Now, using this function, I can make an API or an HTTP request. And this is where I will go ahead and specify my type value or method. So in which I want to get or post or put or patch or delete some information from my API. Okay. Now this is an example of my get method. This is how I first I call the function invoke URL in order to call my API, give the API URL, and then go ahead and mention my method as well, my type value as well. Now, here again, let's say we're using the same use case, media management, which we were just using for inbuilt integration tasks. Now, let's say they have an online news forum for which they source news from this particular open source API. And in this instance, it is the news API that we are going to use it for media management. Okay, so let's see how we can do this. So ideally in the demonstration, what I will be trying to achieve is, again, I will be trying to achieve this by writing a function. And in here, I will be using this invoke URL. I will call the API. Then I will call the function in my form workflow. Okay, so the idea is, let me take you here. I'll take you to my program management application again. Just closing all of this. Right. So now here you will see something called online news forum. I have a form and a report. Right. So the idea here is, when the users submit the form by choosing the country and category, on the form submission, the workflow will be executed, and at the back end, which in turn will call the function or the function as well as the API, and the relevant news will be shown in the report here. Okay, so now this is the idea. And for this, first I'll be writing a function and then I'll call it in the workflow. So let's get started. So now before that, I'll show you the API, the open source API. Just give me a minute. Okay. Now the API documentation for the news API will be shared by my code trainers in the chat section. Okay, now this is a news API, which has worldwide news. Now here you can see there are different articles available. So articles about Tesla and top business headlines and few other articles for regarding TechCrunch, etc. Right? Sorry about that. Now let's just take one API from here. Let's say I'm taking this particular top headlines, top business headlines. Okay, so let me just take the URL. Excuse me. So this is the URL, and this has a list of news information, the top headlines. Okay, now this is just a raw format. Let me show it to you in a better format in a minute. So I come back here to my application. I go to the edit mode of my application. So I'll go to the edit mode of my application, and I'll first create a new function to call the API. So I hope you are able to still see my screen. So I'll come back here and I'll write a new function. Now this function is to call the API. Okay, and I'll select the language as Deluge, and I'll give a namespace. In this instance, I have a namespace already created with regards to news information. So I'll choose that and I'll create my function. So now based on the information that I gave there, some statements got generated automatically, right? Now the first thing for me to do is call the API, and I'm going to use the invoke URL function here. So I'll declare a variable as, let's just say it as response. And here is where I'll paste my URL, my API within a string. Okay, and I'll specify my type value, the request type, the method. I'm just trying to get that information from the API, so I'm just going to say get. Okay, if you have any other parameters, these are some of the optional parameters. In case if you have anything, you can give that. So now I'll say insert, and this is how my API calling will happen. Now I'll go ahead and info the response, and I'll save it. Now let me show you the response in a better way. So now when I execute, I have a response, right? Now I'll copy the response. Now I have the list of news, right? Now I'll copy the response. I'm just trying to put it in a JSON beautifier to show you guys the structure. Now this is giving me all the articles that I've taken from the particular API, right? These many articles, for each of the article, it has an article name, the author name, the title, which is nothing but the headline, some description about that, and the URL and some other information, etc. Right? Now, this is what I'm trying to use inside my form or inside my online news forum. Now, so the next step, now let me just show you how I can, so now I can even parse some information from this, right? So let me just show you how I can do that. So now here I'll say, let's say I want to take now here again, whenever we are parsing some information, especially in the piece of code that we'll be writing, it's always good to refer to the API names or the field link names, the names that will be used at the backend for any other service that we are using. In this instance, the API name for the open source APIs will act as these, right? These names are the API names. So let's say I'm taking the author name. I want the author name, so I'm copying that from here. And the structure here, as we know, as we might know, the JSON response, it includes a list of maps and list, right? So now where you see the curly brackets is a map, and where you see square bracket is list, right? Now this is the structure. Now you see it starts with a map, and then you have an article, and inside that is a list, and then again we have a map within source, and within the source we have this name, and that is getting closed, and then again we have a structure from author, title, description, URL, etc. Now this it is good to understand this, so that we'll be able to put it across properly in the put it across appropriately in the code that we'll be writing. Okay, now let's say I'm going to info the author to parse in the information. So now in place of author, okay, I'm appending it with my response dot, I'm saying it is within my articles, right? So I'm saying get JSON of. Now I'm taking the API name of articles from here. Dot get JSON of. What do I want? The author information. So, okay, the first author has null value. So let's say I'm taking this title. In order for you to just show you guys, just taking that. Now, if I execute, I've passed that information and I will receive, I can see that as a response in the piece of code that I've written, right? That's exactly what is here. Now, this is something I wanted to show you. So now, but however, I want the list of the author and the news headlines as well as the news URL. Sorry, the name, the news name, the author name, and the news URL from this particular JSON response. So for that, I have to iterate through this particular list, this list of articles. And I will be doing that as a next step by using a for each statement. Okay, so first I'll declare a variable here. All news is equal to, I'm containing it here. So response dot get JSON of, I would say articles, because all of these articles are available within this structure, right? So I'm saying that, and I'm using to JSON list in order to convert this particular string to a list format, and then it will return me a list. That's exactly what I'm expecting, right? So that's why I'm using this. And I'm bringing my for each statement, for each news in all news, right? I'm not defining any of these parameters. Instead, we'll start infoing. So I'll info news dot, I want the title, right? News dot get JSON of. Now the name of the news is within the source. So I'm just adding that specific step here. Dot get of the name. Now the name is here. So I'm just copying and pasting that name here. And the next step for me to do is let's say the next thing that I want is author and URL. So let's say news get JSON of author, taking it from here. Info news dot get JSON of. Next thing that I want is, URL. So I'm taking the URL from here as well. Right? So now this is something that I've wanted. Now I just execute and show that to you. Now those information from the list is showing here. I have the name, the news name, the author name, and the URL, right? Now this is something I want to be picked up in my form. Okay, now the next step that I will be doing is relating it with adding these records to my form. So I'll do that using the add record function, which I can see from here, from the left side. I'll add record. To which form would that be? To directly from here. Now online, declaring a variable, insert that into which form would that be? Online news form. And I have 3 fields to be shown. So I'm just copying and pasting it here. Now here for the headlines, I want the title or the name. So I'm just copying that from here in order to save time. And the next one is the author, the news author. For this particular field, I want the author information to be given. And for my news URL, I want the URL to be given. Right? Now I'll save it and I'll go ahead and execute it. Now, once I execute it, like I was telling, once I execute it, ideally I will see it in my report. But what I'm expecting is, let me just quickly duplicate this and I'll show the form as well. Just give me a minute. Just want to simultaneously show the form. So I'll access this application. Now here, when I choose country and category, I want the news to be picked up here. Now, just because I executed, all of the news are showing up here. Now, let me just clear this off. And now I'll add the country as well as the category as a parameter and make this particular function more dynamic. And then one more step is to call this function from that particular form. So I'll just quickly go ahead and do that for you. So now I'm adding the parameter here as string, and that should be country dot string category. Right, and I want to make this more dynamic. So instead of the country here in this API, it says the country is India and the category is business. So I want to make it more dynamic. So instead of that, it should be appending it with country. Sorry. Appending it with country. And the category, make it as a string again. And instead of this, it should say category plus, and make this as a string. So now this is more dynamic. So based on what we are submitting inside the form, it will show me the results. Now I'll say done. Now I'll quickly go ahead and create a new workflow in the form, in the online news form. Choose that form. On the event of record is created. When do I want the form? When do I want to trigger this workflow? When the form is submitted. So now the workflow is fetch news. Okay, so I'll create this. And the one more thing is to call the function. For that, I'll be using this called this app dot, and I'll choose the function from news info, right? To call API, and here it should say, I'm using this keyword called input because I'm referring it to the main form, which is the online news forum form. Input dot. As soon as I keep a dot, it is showing me the relevant fields available in that form. First one is country, comma, input dot category. So now I'll just save that. And now I come to my form here. Now you don't see any news in the report. Now let's go ahead and submit. Let's say India, and let's say some sports news. Submit. Right, now when I go to my report, now you see there are a lot of news that got generated based on the information. Now you see, you can see the news starting with, okay, India versus New Zealand. Right, now you can click the URL and access that particular news. Right. So now this is something you can go ahead and achieve with the third-party API method of integration. And now there's also, now coming back to my presentation, now there's also one more, I would say a really powerful aspect of Creator, which is integration flow. Okay, now integration flow is one of the solutions that is available within your Creator. And using this integration flow, this method is going to help you again connect to your other applications, other Zoho or other third-party applications without a very minimal code. Okay, and you can go ahead and automate some really complex business workflows within minutes. Okay, now this is one of the solution within your analytics, within your Zoho Creator. Just to understand a bit further about integration flow. So now this, ideally you are integrating with the other services with very less or with minimal coding. Okay, now here you can go ahead and set some triggers, add some actions, and you can even use this delay and decisions in order to create your entire workflow. Now here, another important point is the data synchronization happens in real time. Okay, now these could be application based, schedule based, or webhook based. So application based is based on an application, and schedule based is based on a specific date and time, and webhook based is based on a specific API or an HTTP request. This is just a quick diagrammatic representation of where integration flow is positioned itself. Now you have Creator and you have other third-party applications which we have grouped based on the based on the categories or actions that they can perform. Let's say notifications or some tasks or some contacts. Now, in order to integrate, you can use this integration flow, and without writing a lot of code, a lot of piece of code or very minimal code, you can go ahead and integrate with them. For example, your Click or your Gmail or your Salesforce, etc. Now, not just that, you have 600 plus applications with which you can go ahead and integrate. Now, this again will include other Zoho suite of products as well as other third-party applications, right? Now, so now here, just a few points to be familiarized before we start building a integration flow. Now, there's something called triggers and actions. Okay, so now triggers is the starting point of your flow. So you set a trigger and then you go ahead and define an action. So setting a trigger will be something like creating a record or updating a record. And for that specific trigger, you will set another specific action that could be another create a record based on that trigger, or update record, or fetch record, etc. Okay. Now here, let's take a different use case. Let's take in this case another order management application, or even it could be even a restaurant management application, where whenever they are placing an order or whenever they are doing an online booking for the restaurant management, let's say they want to receive an SMS notification confirming their order or booking. Now for that, I'm using another application called Twilio, an SMS service application, in order to activate this particular SMS. Now let's see quickly. Yeah, now before that, excuse me. Now this is just a quick diagrammatic representation of how the data flow happens. Now you have Zoho Creator and Twilio, and we are using in this case Zoho integration flow, and the data communication happens between Creator and Twilio, just like how it's represented in the diagram. Okay, now let's just quickly delve deep into the demonstration. So let me just take you to the application that I've built for this. So now that is called, okay, I think I've zoomed it way a bit more. Right. So now that is called a Zilker Restaurant Management, where they will be able to book rooms for their hotels, and they can do an online booking as well. Okay. Now I also have this one called Twilio. It's a communication APIs for SMS, voice, etc., voice messages, etc. Now I'm trying to activate this SMS process for whenever they make a booking, and whenever they enter a phone number here, when the booking is confirmed, for whatever phone number they're entering, an SMS will be sent back. So that is exactly what I'm trying to achieve using this integration flow method. By integrating with Twilio. Now, this is how the Twilio looks. So you can just register yourself and start having a subscription, and then start integrating with it. Okay, now let's say I'm creating a new integration flow. Just give me a minute. I'm creating a solution. I go to integration flow from scratch, and I give a name. Okay, I can even give a description. And I'll create the flow. So now this is taking me to the builder page, and these are the three types of triggers that we saw. Let's go to app trigger, and from here I'll choose creator, and I'll say next. And here is the trigger event, record created or updated. I'll choose record created, and I'll say done. Now from here I have to choose the connection. I'll choose the connection as Zoho Creator connection. And then in case if I want to make a new connection, I can hit the button and I can go through with the process. right? I can go through with the process, and I'll just use my variable name as this, and I'll choose the application to be my restaurant management application. And based on which form, it is based on the online booking form, I'll say done. That is my first step. It got created. Now, the second step is activate the SMS. So I'll choose Twilio from here. The left side will list out all the applications with which I can integrate. So I'll choose it from here. And these are the two functions that is available. One is fetch message and send SMS. Now I am picking the second one. Now I'll say edit. And once I've done that, the variable name is automatically picked up. Now, here, this is a Twilio number, which I got, which is generated as soon as I subscribed with Twilio. So this is something you will have to do before using this. So now I'll choose that number. From this number to the phone number that they are submitting in that application, in that form, I'm just tagging the phone number, and I'm giving the message as booking confirmed successfully, right? And in case if I want a booking ID to be given, so I can just simply tag that. So it will pick the booking ID as well. Now I'll say done. So once I've done, I'll go to test and debug, right? And then I'll switch on my flow. Now, if I submit, now let me go here. Now, if I submit, right? Now, if I submit a form from here, let's say I'm just quickly submitting, if I'm giving a phone number, when I hit submit button, ideally a message should have sent to that particular phone number. Okay, now there's a way for me to see that. Now that I can see from, go back to my same builder, and then just next to that, you see this history. Now here, it will show you it will have all the records. So it'll just take some time to appear here. Okay, it'll just take a few minutes to appear here. Let me just show it to you from here. So I go to history, and here you will see that the event that we were trying to do, the record of that will be here. And once you click on the completed, it successfully says completed. You can see the input and output that we've provided. Right now, you can even see the message that we were trying to place from here. It will give the clear idea of the input as well as the output. Okay, now this is pretty much what you can achieve with integration flow. Now, just a few key pointers for us, and then we're almost at the end of this session. Now, with regards to the integration field, you can display up to a maximum of 3 columns in the field from the other service into Creator. Now, this field will display data based on the subscription that you have for the other target service, allows accessing to the target module. Now, integration field will also display all data except the fields that contain multiple lines of text, URLs, media, also some fields that displays choices in drop-down menus as well as radio buttons or checkboxes. Okay. Now, when it comes to integration forms, when you've built it from the form properties, you'll be able to control the form entries. And in the integration form, the data can also be submitted from the external service as well. Right now, when it comes to integration tasks, these APIs are detected from the overall external call limit that is provided for your Creator plan. Now, when it comes to also, this acts as a wrapper for the respective API service. In simple terms, integration tasks are nothing but simplified API calls. So these are some of the pointers to keep in mind. And also, when it comes to integration field and integration forms, the API consumption also happens at the backend. Okay. Now, this pretty much brings us to the end of this session. Now, before we wrap up, I just wanted to give you a hint about our upcoming session. We also have an upcoming session of Learning Table series on the 1st of February, in which we'll be driving the session based on the use cases, industry-based use cases. And followed by that, on the second week, that is 8th of February, we also have a Tech Connect series. We'll be driving the session with the technical nuances of features of Creator. Right now, the registration link for these 2 series will be shared in the chat box by my co-trainers, and I would kindly request you to go ahead and register that. In case if you have any further questions, you can also write to us at training@zohocreator.com. Thank you so much.